like this is Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2. And so now as I'm older, looking back, it makes sense that they should have done something different for a sequel with the daughter. That makes sense, and that's probably what would be done with a sequel nowadays. But it's just, to me, this is kind of how Stephen King sequels were, in that there's like this concept, and they just transpose that concept to new characters for the sequels. Like Children of the Corn movies, like I know I go back to those often, but the sequels are very rarely interconnected. Like Children of the Corn 2 is kind of a sequel to Children of the Corn, but you don't really get the same, there's none of the same characters. And then Children of the Corn 6 has a character for Children of the Corn 1, but like honestly, that's like really it and there's like 9 Children of the Corn movies. So for me, Stephen King sequels are always just about the concept being lifted and put somewhere else. And then you make another sequel and you lift that concept and put it somewhere else. So as far as I'm concerned, Pet Sematary 3 would have just been lifting up the concept of bringing people back from the dead, but moving it to completely new characters again. And probably they would have had to take it to somewhere else to keep it fresh, because you can't just keep having the same kind of thing happening in the same city every single time. So, it's almost like a different type of a sequel when you get these crazy Stephen King sequels.
That's a good point. I think that a lot of times Stephen King concepts they don't have the longevity necessary for a franchise. And I think it's a mistake maybe to try to franchise them or, proceed beyond the single story. He is an author as well with his works, where it doesn't really... He tells you the whole story in a book, or at least he used to. I haven't read a Stephen King book in ages, and I know that Dark Tower is this big connected universe thing that will inevitably become a show on Amazon or something. But
I hope so. I'm crossing my fingers right now.
I tapped out on the 4th book in that series. That was a long time ago. But I think that the problem is just that they're such interesting one-shots. And I think that's probably the problem with this, is once they didn't go with the idea of following Ellie's story, everybody should have just shook hands and walked away and just said, you know what, then, there's no real point to making this.
Yeah, there's not really a underlining theme here, I guess, like there is in the first one. I don't know. You don't... I'll say this, though, like, not having seen either of these, right? And, of course, I'm watching them the first time together. Like, this is, like, the plot I might have expected more from the first movie. I guess, like,
yeah.
well, these kids find this pet cemetery, and they bury their dog, and it comes back, and it's evil. And then, like, people start coming back, and they're evil, because, the zombies 5 people in this movie are... The rules are different, this time around.
Yep.
But that allows for more fun with Clancy Brown's character. Because in the first one, it was they were like more grotesque and more base instinct and more just straight up, I'm going to kill everyone at every second. But in this one, predominantly Clancy Brown, he's still kind of himself, but he's kind of not, and it's interesting. Perhaps just for his performance alone, I'm willing to give it a little leadway with that.
Yeah, like Clancy Brown really steals the show in this. And like I agree with you guys. Like upon a rewatch, now that I'm older, like this film doesn't hold up like it did when I was a teenager, like when I was a kid, like this was Citizen Kane, 2.0, right? So like I really loved this movie a whole ton when I was a kid, And watching it again, I'm like, there's some really large logic jumps in this film that really don't quite make a heck of a lot of sense. And, when you're young and you're not an experienced moviegoer, those things you don't really see. Like, for example, like, at what point did Edward Furlong's character talk with Clancy Brown's character and be like, okay, so you go and bury my mom? And then he's, like, back at home setting everything up for his mom to come back, like... when you look at that, like, there's a lot of logic leaps that are going on there that don't quite work. So,
I think that might speak to... and again, you said there's no like commentary track we can lean on or anything like that. The sense that I have, and this is jumping to a conclusion, I readily admit that. I would gladly be corrected by anybody who knows better or anything like that. But the vibe I get is that this was a sinking ship, and they realized it as they were getting the rushes back, and they said, what can we do? What can we do to make this more fun and more zany? Because if you lean into that with a horror movie, people can be more forgiving of things. And I really sincerely believe that the Edward Furlong plot wasn't quite working. Mm-hmm. And so they leaned more into these other things and said, okay, let's have him trying to bring up an undead army. Let's have him, with more action sequences and stuff like that. And I think that, because you have the writer on set. I got to rewrite a scene here. I got to, workshop this. I got to figure out how this is going to work. I think that based on the way that it ends, that feels like the ending to the original plot for the movie, and then everything else was backfilled to make up for, we can't really use this right now.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Like, again, watching this, they're like, look, this movie is not working, but you know what? We've got this gem of Clancy Brown that we can just go with. Mm-hmm. And because you are very right. It does feel like two separate stories that have been put together, and I would not put that past the film at all. They're like, how can we salvage this? We could salvage this with Clancy Brown because he does an outstanding performance.
Yeah, for that whole subplot with the family, I was pretty shocked that Drew and his mom just got killed, because to me, like, that had become almost the A plot.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, surely at least the kid will survive. But no, they both died, and that's it, and they're gone. I'm like, whoa, okay, I guess that story's over. Because you think, oh, him and his mom have been abused by the guy, right? But they're gonna get theirs. It's gonna be like Shining, right? They're gonna escape, and the bad dad, so to speak, is gonna be defeated. But that's not what happens at all. And actually, Brandon, did you catch who played the mom?
I sure did. Yeah, she was in X-Files a couple of times. She was in Shadows.
Right. I had to look it up because I was like, I know who this is. Was she in Star Trek? Like, how do I know this? How do I know this actress? And I looked up. Yeah, Lisa Waltz was in season 1 episode of the X-Files Shadows, and it was just around the same time too. So she looked exactly the way she did when she was on X-Files. But I just think the whole movie star mom and all that was a huge miscalculation. It just was so out of place. And I don't even know how he even came up with that. Like, keep it small, keep it inside the town. Like, you don't need to have, even if they were outsiders coming back home, like the mom character didn't need to be some famous actress or something.
Right, and the way that the movie starts is so disorienting, where it comes in and my reaction was literally, what the hell is going on right now? And then like, oh, it's a movie set? What? And it just did not. It actually came off a lot like a Tales from the Dark Side, or not. Like Tales from the Crypt. That was the cream of the horror story stuff. Tales from the Dark Side. That was just because you were a horror fan. You stuck with that one, and so it really.
Well, I'm sure, John. I'm sure that was part of their intention. It was like a misdirect. Like, oh, you thought it was this, but it's just a movie.
Sure. Oh, sure, but the thing is, I think it immediately puts the audience on an uncomfortable footing. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can expect to have a serious movie experience, which seemed to be what they were going for at first, before Clancy Brown gets the chance to, and we keep talking about Clancy Brown. He's so great.
Yeah.
But it seems like they were going for something more serious at first, and I don't think you can go with something. It's just the execution of it was not what it needed to be to get me to trust the movie to work. Right? It immediately betrayed what I expected. And reversal of expectation works fine and all of that stuff, but you got to do it right. You got to do it right. And I don't think that this opening is executed right.
Yeah, I agree. Like, beyond this, like, there's not really much to talk about. Like, there's not as deep a discussion. Like when we talked last time about Pet Sematary 1, it's like we can understand the justification of these people. They don't want the daughter to suffer, so they bring back the cat. The dad's, like, the boy is killed, and he can't live without his son, so they brings it back. And he has the justification of, the wife just died, so maybe she'll be okay. So we have these, we can believe these characters bringing these people back from the dead, but like the mom in this, it's like I'm certain a significant amount of time has passed,
weeks at least,
from when the mom died, if not months, which I'm guessing it's closer to months because he died before the school year started, and it's Halloween and then some, so like there's months have gone by, and so like there's none of the depth and the thought-provoking aspect of the first movie in this, and it's just a horror sequel with some crazy elements. You got some crazy killing. Like, you got the awesome killing scene when he kills the bully with the bicycle tire, and I'm like, I love that scene so much. It still makes me laugh, right? But I mean, I'm a twisted man, so.
Well, yeah, and then he becomes like the protector for John Connor, but not his stepson, and they both buried him because he was being nice to the stepson. But then he wasn't. The rules are, you can't follow the rules of the zombies here. I guess we're calling them zombies, is what they are. But at that point, it just devolved into schlock, and you're just, I'll enjoy the performance of Clancy Brown. And at that point, I'd given up trying to understand the motivations. At that point.
Yeah. Right on. Well, I don't think we're going to get an hour-long in-depth discussion on this film here. So, we could jump into, John, is there any final thoughts, anything that we haven't addressed yet? And do you want to give a rating? How many times would you bring this back from the dead?
Well, I mean, that's tough. I wound up giving it 1 star, but I don't know if I would ever bring it back. The only way I could see ever bringing this back is if I had a few too many adult beverages and was sitting around with some friends and said, "Oh, it's on Prime. Let's have some fun, guys," and just heckle the movie.
Yes.
And the thing is, like, it bothers me to say that because I know that everybody that works, nobody intends for a movie to misfire. Nobody intends for it to be a bad experience. And so as easy as it is to rag on things, like I always want to course correct and come back around. But I think that the simple fact that there's no commentary, there's no special treatment, and people don't reminisce fondly about this in any fashion.
There's no Blu-ray of this even. Like, they haven't even done an HD transfer of this thing yet.
And I doubt that they ever will. I think that this is one of those ones where even Mary Lambert would say, well, yeah, it happened and I got a paycheck, so let's just move forward and let's talk about these other things that I did, these wonderful achievements elsewhere.
Well, yeah, you mentioned Mary Lambert there, John. It is odd, like in these lesser horror sequels, it's usually the directors don't return. And it's like, no, this is her coming back. This is her coming back and making a sequel to Pet Sematary, and this is what we got. So, and who knows what factors contributed to what we got? But yeah, I'll ask you guys: at what point do you think they decided? What?
One thing I just want to say, that almost makes you want to hear more from her on this.
Yep.
Because it's like, well, what brought her back? Like, why did she come back? That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I was really surprised. Because growing up, I wasn't into directors and stuff, and so I didn't realize that she directed both until I bought the Blu-ray of the first and the DVD of the second, and I'm like, oh, she did both.
Well, at what point do you think they were like, you know what? It would be a great scene if Anthony Edwards is having a dream, and his wife is alive again.
Holy smokes! What the hell
and
was
they're gonna have sex, but wait, she has a wolf head, and it's really the dog, and it's like. That was the most unsettling thing I've seen in a long time, right? So,
and it also what was very weird about it was that the first movie is very non-sexual.
Yeah, asexual,
it's not your typical,
if you will. Yeah, totally.
Right. It's not your typical horror movie where it's like, oh, here's the boob shot, sort of thing. Whereas this follows that lesser impulse, and I mean, like, I'm almost going down a theory in my brain now where, like it got so bad with the studio that Lambert basically, like, purposely just said, yeah, okay, sure, let's do it.
Because those are very gratuitous breast shots.
Yeah. Yeah, it's extremely uncomfortable, honestly, because you're just going along. It's like, whoa, hey, where'd that come from?
Not going to watch this with your daughters, are you, Brandon? So.
No, not anytime soon. But yeah.
Oh, man. So anyway, all that being said,